Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive brought to you by Defient.
The on-chain lifestyle sports brand.
That's right.
That's us.
We got a really interesting deep dive today. I'm super excited about some of the stuff we're going to talk about today.
Too. It's a grab bag today.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, we're talking about DeFi, we're talking about entertainment, we're talking about sports. But we're going to, as always, we're going to start with the DeFi and crypto.
Okay, sounds good.
So, one of the big stories that kind of hit the headlines this week was Napster.
Napster, yeah.
And that just like that name brings back so many memories.
For people of a certain age.
And people of a certain age, yeah. Like you remember burning CDs and like
LimeWire.
Oh yeah, LimeWire, Kazaa, all that stuff.
All that good stuff.
So Napster is apparently selling $207 million worth of assets to HiveMind and Algorand.
Wow.
To build a music metaverse.
A music metaverse.
Well, what does that even mean, a music metaverse?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows what that means, but it sounds cool.
I mean, it sounds cool, but it's Napster. So are we talking about like the same Napster that was like getting sued by like Metallica?
Yeah, this is that Napster. This is the one that was like the bane of the music industry's existence for a while.
Right.
And now they're trying to, I guess, revolutionize it again.
So do you think that this is like a genuine kind of like attempt to change how we interact with music, or is this just like a cash grab?
It's hard to say. I think there's probably elements of both, right? I mean, anytime you see something like metaverse attached to something, it's kind of like a little bit of a red flag.
Right.
But I think that there is a legitimate case to be made for using blockchain technology to improve the way that music is distributed and the way that artists are compensated.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, especially with like NFTs and stuff like that could be a whole new way for artists to...
Yeah, and I think like the challenge that a lot of these platforms have had in the past is that they've been very kind of crypto native and they haven't really been accessible to a mainstream audience.
Yeah.
So the fact that you have Napster, which is a name that everybody knows,
right,
whether you're into crypto or not, you know what Napster is.
You know what Napster is, yeah.
That could potentially be a way to kind of onboard a lot of people into this new world.
So they're sort of like the Trojan horse in a way.
Potentially.
So if this actually works, right, and we do see a future where music is being distributed and monetized in this Web3 kind of way, what do you think that means for the traditional music industry?
Oh, man, that's a huge question. I mean, I think it could be really disruptive.
Yeah.
Right now you have these big record labels that control a lot of the distribution and the revenue streams.
Right.
And if you have a system where artists can connect directly with their fans and sell their music directly to them.
Cut out the middleman?
Cut out the middleman. Yeah, that could really change things. I mean, it could be good for artists. It could be bad for record labels. It could be good for fans. It's hard to say exactly how it's all going to shake out.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those, like, we're at the very beginning of this. So
yeah,
it's hard to predict where it's going to go.
You're in uncharted territory.
Okay. So moving from music to another company that's been in the news a lot lately, GameStop.
Oh, yeah.
So GameStop is adding Bitcoin to their treasury as a reserve asset.
Interesting.
We've seen other companies do this, like MicroStrategy, Tesla.
Sure.
What do you think is the thinking behind this? Like, why Bitcoin specifically? Why now?
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on. One is that there's definitely a growing sense among some investors and some companies that Bitcoin is a legitimate store of value.
Okay.
It's often referred to as digital gold.
Right.
And so I think that there's a sense that as inflation continues to be a concern, as the global economy continues to be a little bit shaky.
A hedge.
Yeah, it's a hedge against that.
Okay.
And then I guess specifically for GameStop, they're a company that's been through a lot in the last few years. Yeah. And they're trying to reinvent themselves. They're trying to figure out what their place is in this new world.
Right.
And so I think that this is a way for them to signal that they're forward-thinking, that they're innovative, that they're not afraid to take risks.
To kind of like ride that wave a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you think that we're going to see more companies, particularly in the retail space or in the gaming space, kind of follow GameStop's lead here?
I think it's possible. Whenever you see a company like GameStop, which is a pretty big name, make a move like this, it does kind of legitimize it a little bit.
Right.
And so I think that other companies that might have been on the fence about it might start to take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and we also have to talk about the regulatory landscape here.
Yeah.
That's a huge factor in all this.
Absolutely.
as more companies start to adopt crypto as like a legitimate asset.
Sure.
How do you think that's going to impact how governments regulate this space?
Well, I think it's going to force them to take it more seriously. For a long time, crypto was kind of seen as this fringe thing.
Like the Wild West.
Yeah, it was the Wild West, and it was like, oh, it's just a bunch of nerds playing around on their computers.
Yeah.
But now you have major corporations with billions of dollars.
Putting skin in the game.
Putting skin in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that regulators are going to have to start paying attention, and they're going to have to start figuring out how they want to regulate this space.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
For sure.
All right, so let's move on to another big story in the Web3 space, Ronin network, which a lot of people might know from the game Axie Infinity.
Right.
Is launching on OpenSea, the biggest NFT marketplace.
Yeah, this is a big deal.
It is a big deal. And there's an interesting kind of like backstory here, right?
Yeah, so the founders of OpenSea and the founders of Axie Infinity, they actually met back in like 2017 in the CryptoKitties Discord server.
Wow.
Yeah, so this was like the very early days of NFTs. And so it's kind of cool to see these two projects that have become so successful kind of come full circle, and now they're working together.
Yeah, it's like a real testament to how this industry has evolved.
Absolutely.
So what are the key implications of this integration? I mean,
Yeah.
what does it mean for Ronin? What does it mean for OpenSea?
Well, for Ronin, it means that they're going to have access to a much larger audience.
Okay.
OpenSea is the biggest NFT marketplace in the world.
Right.
So now all of the Ronin NFTs are going to be available to a much wider pool of buyers and sellers.
Right.
And then for OpenSea, it means that they're getting access to a really interesting and growing ecosystem.
Okay.
Ronin is one of the most popular blockchain gaming platforms out there.
Right.
And so they're bringing a lot of new users and a lot of new activity to OpenSea.
So it's kind of like a win-win for both of them?
Yeah, I think so.
And I think this also speaks to the growing importance of gaming in the NFT space.
Right.
Like, we're seeing more and more games that are incorporating NFTs, and I think that's only going to continue.
Yeah, I think gaming is one of the most promising use cases for NFTs.
Right.
Because it allows you to create these really interesting in-game items and assets that people can actually own and trade.
Yeah, and it gives them, real value.
Right.
So, okay, let's move on to sports.
Okay, sounds good.
TGL, the new golf league.
Yeah.
Just wrapped up its inaugural season.
It did. It was exciting.
It was exciting.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I was a little bit skeptical at first. I was like, is this going to work?
Right.
But I was actually really impressed.
Yeah, me too.
So for people who don't know what TGL is, can you just give us a quick overview?
Sure. So TGL stands for Tomorrow Golf League.
Okay.
And it's basically a new golf league that's been created by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy.
Big names.
Big names, yeah. And the idea is to create a more fast-paced and exciting version of golf.
Okay.
So the matches are played in a virtual arena. So it's like a big indoor facility with giant screens and stuff.
So there's a tech element to it.
Yeah, there's a big tech element to it.
Right.
And the matches are shorter, so they're only 2 hours long.
Okay.
And there's a lot more emphasis on strategy and teamwork.
So it's not just your traditional golf tournament.
No, it's very different.
Okay, so what was the response like from fans? I mean, did people actually like this?
Yeah, I think the response has been really positive.
Okay.
I think a lot of people were curious to see how it would work, and I think that they've been pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Enjoying it, and the crowds have been really into it.
So it's actually creating some buzz.
Yeah, I think so.
So do you think this is a legitimate threat to the PGA Tour, or is it just a novelty?
I think it's too early to say.
Okay.
The PGA Tour is obviously the big dog in golf.
Yeah.
But I think that TGL is definitely something that they're going to have to keep an eye on.
Right.
If TGL can continue to grow and continue to attract top players.
Right.
I think it could definitely become a serious competitor.
All right, so let's wrap things up with some NFL news.
Okay, sounds good.
Some pretty big trades went down during free agency.
Yeah, there were some big moves.
Big moves. Russell Wilson is now a New York Giant.
Wow.
And Stefon Diggs is a New England Patriot.
Interesting.
So let's start with Russell Wilson.
Okay.
How do you think this changes the Giants' offense?
Well, I think it's a huge upgrade for them.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson is a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Yeah.
He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Right.
And he brings a lot of experience and leadership to the Giants.
So you think he can turn them into a contender?
I think he has the potential to. They still have some holes on their roster.
Right.
But if Wilson can play at a high level,
Right.
I think they could definitely be a playoff team.
All right, so let's talk about Stefon Diggs.
Okay.
What does he bring to the Patriots?
Well, he's one of the best wide receivers in the league.
Right.
He's a great route runner. He's got great hands.
Right.
And he's a big play threat.
Yeah, he's going to be a great target for Mac Jones.
Yeah, I think so.
So do you think that the Patriots are a Super Bowl contender now?
I think it's too early to say.
Okay.
They definitely got better with Diggs.
Right.
But the AFC is really tough.
It's a tough conference.
Yeah, there are a lot of good teams.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. Make sure to check us out next time on The Deep Dive, brought to you by Defient.
The on-chain lifestyle sports brand.
Until next time.